This is Lee from San Francisco, California, and you're listening to Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I'm here with my co-host, Sophy. Hey, Sophy.
Hey, Kelly.
And today we are joined by Amanda Barge, who is running for Mayor of Bloomington, Indiana. Hi, Amanda.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here. We're excited to be talking about women running for executive offices. So maybe you could start by telling us just a little bit about your background and why you're running for mayor.
Sure. So I have spent most of my life, my teenage to adult life, in kind of feminist causes, and probably when I was about 19, sort of found passion in volunteering for groups like Planned Parenthood. And I just had always been interested in politics, and I majored in gender studies and political science, and ended up getting my master's in social work. And I've spent about 20 years kind of working in that field in community mental health and just kind of all corners of this community. And so that sort of lends itself really well to government. And I got involved with a local group called the Democratic Women's Caucus and got involved in a lot of women's campaigns. And that was really inspiring to me. And sort of what I learned from that is, hey, I can do this. You know, if I can help other women, I can do this too. And it gave me kind of the courage and confidence to run. And I ran for county commissioner, which is an executive position. It's a collaborative role. There are 3 of us. And one thing that's kind of exciting about that is that we are the first all-female board of commissioners in history of Indiana, in the state of Indiana.
Wow.
So that's pretty exciting. So we are pretty excited about that. So sort of my social work background kind of led me to wanting to serve my community in kind of a more macro way. And that's how I ended up here.
All right. So talk to us a little bit about Bloomington, Indiana. So I think when people think of Indiana, they think of this super Republican state, but I think Bloomington is not that. So what is Bloomington like?
Indiana is, yes, very conservative, and sometimes we are sort of the pun in a joke, you know, in our jokes from the conservative side. But Bloomington is extremely progressive. It is a college town, so basically, you know, half of our population are college students. And we're centered around 85,000 people. And the great thing here is that we have actually been a Democratic community since the 70s. So back in the 1970s, there were a group of people that ran as a slate, a group of Democrats, and they sort of completely switched our city council. And since then, we've been Democratic. So we are very blue here, and it's pretty exciting. And in fact, a lot of the debates end up being who's more progressive than the other one. So if there's candidates running against each other.
And you're actually challenging an incumbent Democrat who's mayor currently.
I am, yes.
So what are some of the issues then that are driving your campaign and that make you want to then challenge an incumbent?
About a year ago, I was kind of out in the community and working on different issues, specifically really working hard on the opioid epidemic. And that's one of the issues that propelled me to run for office, was just the fact that we had an epidemic. We had people, you know, who were dying, and I didn't think there was enough of a coordinated effort to tackle that issue. And with my social work background, I knew I could just hit the ground running and improve things. And so, you know, that has been one of the focuses of kind of my role as commissioner, is bringing people together on that issue. And one of the issues that sort of struck me, I volunteered for the current mayor. I was supportive of him. And, you know, what I was noticing out in the community is that people felt like kind of his vision wasn't their vision of what they wanted for this community. And one of the things that sort of made me decide to actually do it was that the administration posted overdose death data on the city website. So you could find out where your neighbors had overdosed and died. And, I spoke up and I just said, this isn't okay. And I don't think our current administration is really in touch with real people. And I'm happy to say that I've gotten a lot of support. We actually have only had one elected female mayor in 200 years. So a lot of young people are excited that I'm running, and a lot of young women are particularly excited to see kind of a different face or a different voice out there.
What do you see as your sort of path to victory? What are you focusing on going into the election?
Yeah, so when I ran for commissioner, I focused on being super grassroots. I ran against a former deputy mayor and a chancellor at a local college, and also a former party chair. So two very well-known males in our community. And, I had a path that was difficult, but I focused on grassroots and knocking on doors, and I focused on the issues that I was hearing people care about. So this time around, I wanted to make sure I really understood city issues, because I'm very familiar with county issues. I know what's going on. And so I did something that Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who is also running for president, he did when he ran for mayor. He did this awesome thing called 100 cups of coffee. So he had 100 cups of coffee with people he didn't know. And so I did the same thing. And I have to say, I'm a lifelong resident here, and it was amazing. I learned so much, and I really enjoyed it. And so I kind of wove that into my platform. And I think my path to victory is really the issues that people care about. So transparency, climate change is huge in this community. People really want to see people stepping up and making a difference there. And then, of course, kind of social issues, homelessness, poverty, addiction, mental health. And so making sure that I have my finger on the pulse of the issues and just knocking on every single door. Those are my two things that I'm focusing on.
So you mentioned transparency, and that's something that's on your website as well. What are the kinds of things you'd like to do to increase the transparency?
Yeah, one of the first things I want to do is just come up with kind of a transparency improvement plan, which sounds a little wonky, but what I really want to focus on is coming up with protocols for why we hire consultants. My opponent has hired an unprecedented amount of consultants without sort of explaining why. So it's a lot of money spent. Sometimes we hire 1, 2, 3 consultants, after another. And I really want to sort of narrow down, what are best practices for hiring consultants. I want to narrow down sort of what are best practices on, if you're going to purchase a large vehicle, for example. That was an issue that was problematic for him. We purchased a large militarized vehicle with very little to no transparency. If we're going to spend a certain amount of money, then we ought to be including the public on these decisions. And so I really want to come up with a plan. I want to identify gaps, and I want to fix those gaps immediately. And I'm really used to being transparent because our county government, we do everything in public. And so it'll be a natural process, I think, for me to be able to do that. And I think when we think about policy, policy is sort of needs to be shaped by the community. It's not, hey, I came up with this idea and I want to push it and make it happen. To me, it's the opposite. I see the needs. Let's figure out how we can meet those needs, fill those gaps, and let's do that with folks at the table.
What does the city government look like in Bloomington? So you're talking about these things that the mayor has done in terms of hiring consultants and buying vehicles. What's the relationship? Is there a city council? What's the relationship between the mayor and the city council? How does that work? And how would you see your role as sort of the chief executive for the city?
So, yeah, absolutely. The city administration is our mayor and then our deputy mayor, and we have several departments. And it's crucial that they work closely with the city council because they are the legislative body. And, that is a major issue right now is that the city council and the mayor aren't getting along very well. And the communication is difficult. And that's where, I've brought my social work experience. That's where being a therapist is actually really helpful. So I've done this in county government as the executive. I consider these kinds of relationships to be a team, and we work together collaboratively. And that is something that really needs some improvement because often policies or projects get stopped simply because of lack of communication or lack of coordination, lack of that feeling of like everybody having buy-in. And so, right now we are at a point where our city council, our legislative body, and our administration aren't communicating as well as they could be. And so I would so look forward to kind of bringing people together and being more of a team. And that's this kind of thing I really enjoy, is just like, I actually enjoy sitting down with people whose perspectives are completely the opposite of mine and figuring out a way to sort of thread those folks together and bring people together around a common issue.
You're a mom of 2 kids. I think they're 14 and 12.
Yes. Yes.
What is it like running for office with your children? What do they feel about the campaign? Are they enjoying it?
Well, I laugh because when I ran before, my kids were like, yay, it's going to be so fun, because there was like food at the events and stuff. But I would say about a year ago, when I started really thinking about this, we had a lot of family meetings, and it was like, my husband and I sitting down and just like, hey, we're thinking about it. What do you think? And they were both excited about it. And we were like, but remember, it's fun at first, but it's not fun at the end when everyone's really busy. But I have to say that, I'm running partly because of my kids, and I really do want to leave this community better than I found it. And, so I think they've benefited so much from being at meetings with me. I take them as many places as I can. Obviously, they have to have, a normal life and hang out with their friends and do the things they want to do. But I do try to bring them to things. And sometimes they're really bored, and sometimes we'll leave and they'll actually be like, well, why did that happen? And the other day, my daughter, we're driving to school, and she's like, why is this road taking so long to get fixed? And I thought, we're really, it's good for them to see their mom kind of out there and in the community. And, I know that this is a positive for them, but yeah, it is hard. And gosh, I tell you what, I've been asking my friends, I'm like, I think I need a meal train. Like, we need help, just on the basics, like, please. And, it's okay to ask for help, because I can't do it all. Right. And we're definitely a team, but it is difficult for sure. And they're going to be happy when it's over. They'll be happy.
You mentioned earlier that climate change is a big deal in the community, which makes a lot of sense with a big college there. What are some of the things that you think you could do at the city level to improve renewable energy and meet goals? We think a lot about sort of what is the country doing, but I know there's a lot that can be done at the local level as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that kind of sticks with me when I'm talking about climate change is the practicality of it. And just, I think, being a social worker and having worked with people, marginalized populations for so long, that I think about, well, okay, solar panels are awesome and they should be on every building and house. They're expensive. And so I want to really look at creative alternatives like, solar co-ops and helping each other. There are programs for folks that are lower income, low to middle income, being able to get solar panels. I want to do things like get solar panels on every single school in our school district. And I think that's something that we can do, like we can work together on that. One of the things that I was initially involved with when my kids were littler is I worked with a friend who was really involved in the PTO, and she got recycling in our schools. And we weren't recycling, which is, to me, is just amazing. But now the kids are really into recycling. We did it at our school, and now it's at every school. And it was those kind of like partnerships. So we partnered with our local solid waste district, and every kid now recycles, and they want to. They have buy-in. And so I love partnerships. I think we really have to focus on not just people who already understand or get it, but like people who, like moms who are just trying to get their kids to school and get their dinner on the table. And, how can we implement climate change activities? How can we mitigate climate change for folks that, quite frankly, that's not their first concern or that's not their major concern. So I'm really interested in that. I'm really interested in working on this is a little more kind of detail oriented, but I am on the solid waste district. And I think bringing jobs to our community, bringing green jobs to our community is really important. And we're talking about a compost business, a countywide compost business. We're also talking about bringing in a business where people are recycling televisions and repairing them to be reused. So I'm really all about kind of community economic development. So how can we improve an issue and also improve our economy at the same time?
So since you're challenging an incumbent, you're running in the primary. So when is the primary election?
It is May 7th. And I will say in this community, being as progressive as it is, that is generally the election, right?
Yeah,
So,
I live in Chicago. I get it.
yeah, exactly. You definitely do that. Yeah, so May 7th, it's coming right up. And we have early voting. And so that starts April 9th. It's like right around the corner.
And so if our listeners would like to help out, whether they're local or maybe a little bit farther away, what are some of the ways that they can do that?
Absolutely. So we have a website, bargeforbloomington.com. We're really looking for people that want to make phone calls, knock on doors, and obviously donating. We definitely, that is an area where I differ from my opponent. He has over $100,000 in the bank, kind of an unprecedented amount for our community, and it's raised a lot of funds outside of our community. So we're working real hard to raise funds within our community. So any amount helps for sure. But we have a really, really good group. I consider this to be more of a movement than I do just, a boring campaign. I consider this to be a growing movement. And I think it's important that we offer a choice, because we get to do that every 4 years, and that's a good thing. It's not something to be uncomfortable about. And I think we are getting more and more comfortable with challenging incumbents. And that's kind of the gift that we got from 2016, seeing so many people running. If there's any gift, there's not very many, right? But if there are any gifts, it's one thing is that we a lot more people are getting involved in challenging the status quo. So,
Amanda, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talk about?
I would just want to say, one thing I love about your podcast is you're encouraging women to run. And I'm really involved locally in helping women run. It's a big part of my life, and I mentor a lot of women. And I just want to say to those who are listening that if you're thinking about getting involved, do it. And there are support networks out there. And definitely, I think women get involved when there's an issue they're concerned about, whether it's potholes or your kid's school or whatever it is. But, definitely don't be afraid to get involved. And I think moms can do it. And, we need more moms getting involved because we want better representation in our government, right? We want people, all backgrounds. We don't just want retired folks. We don't just want a certain segment of the population. And I think it's so important that women step up in any way that they can, in any way that they're comfortable. And maybe even not comfortable, right? Challenging yourself a little bit.
Yeah, and I think one thing we're exploring in our every other week series, Vote Her In, where we're talking about electing a woman president, is how important it is to have women in executive roles. We're seeing so many women enter the legislature, which is great, but having executive roles at county level, at city level, at state level is going to be increasingly important as we want to start thinking about having women as president.
Right, and I actually developed a course when I was in college. It was Women in Politics. And I think back how long ago that was. And I remember that was like my dream, right? We'll have a female president. And that was the 90s. And so the late 90s. And so here we are, still hoping to break that final glass ceiling. And I know as an executive that we have a lot of women who are in leadership roles and executive roles in our community. And I have to say, that's really nice. But when we look at, we're doing a project right now that involves the business community, and that's all older men, right? So there's still a lot of ceilings to be broken through. And I think women still get challenged and questioned as to whether or not they're capable. And oftentimes it'll be, well, you don't have the experience, right? Or you don't have the right skill set. And that's just not true. And so I think it's great that you're exploring that, because I think women are amazing executives. Women tend to be super collaborative and creative and compassionate, and, we're great leaders.
All right. Well, we will put links to your website and your information up on our website if people want to check it out and help out with the campaign. And Amanda, thanks so much for running, for challenging. I think that's always important, as you mentioned, to offer choices. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.